The mindset of like saving first and spend what's left is kind of a switch of perspective that I think is really valuable, especially to younger people.
People dealing with monies, inheriting, and we know that that is going to only increase. What is keeping people feeling poor? And where are we seeing financial missteps?
The biggest difference between the haves and the have-nots is that the haves, they have a vision of the future that they want to be able to get to.
People be so payment sensitive that they have sunk more assets into the next home than they probably should have, in the form of then they're coming my way saying, hey, we now want to redo the floors.
If you have a documented financial plan where you can accomplish your financial goals and do this other thing at the same time, and if you can afford it within your cash flow, I think all the more power to them.
You've worked hard, you put yourself in a great position, buy the house.
When clients are working with you, or real estate agents are working with you, do you feel like somebody's kind of short-term like pattern of thinking is kind of stopping them from accomplishing their housing goals?
I'm going to have a $300,000 payday. Should I put it all against the mortgage?
Right. You should explore all options, but I guess what would you say helps somebody reach a decision one way or the other in your experience?
Undisciplined and unfocused planning. Do you see people in your world falling into that trap? All right, sitting here with Matthew Fitzgerald with Holistic Financial Planning. Thanks for joining me today, Matt.
Thanks for having me, Chris. Excited to be here.
And sorry, and I'll be careful between Matt and Matthew. I know you kind of interchangeably.
I like to say friends call me Matt, clients call me Matthew, but I also consider my clients my friends too. So either one is totally okay.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate you giving me grace on that. And we've had Matthew on our podcast before, and but just as a quick reminder that Matt is a certified financial planner with Holistic Planning, and it has office down in Sedona, is also up here in the Flagstaff area. Mm-hmm. And how long have you been doing that?
So I've been in the financial industry almost 10 years. So started with a Fortune 500 company down in Sedona, and recently last year made the leap to independence, and found Holistic Planning about 2 years ago, and it's been a really great journey coming along, becoming a fiduciary. Yeah,
I love that. And we would wanted to talk today, and we're seeing so much happen in the economy right now. Right. And I think not to bore our clients, or not to bore our audience too much, when people talk about this K-shaped recovery, right? And to those that might be new to that term, and I'm fascinated by that term, I'm saying some people are doing great, and a lot of people are not doing so great. And while I certainly have empathy to everyone in their financial situation, this economy is hitting people differently. Mm-hmm. We're all feeling that pain at the pumps and in the grocery store, and in so many different ways, and in real estate in different ways right now. But I love the idea of empowerment, of saying, what are we doing? What are our consumer behaviors, and how are we managing our money and our financial decisions so that we can work to be on the upside of our own personal economy trajectory, irregardless of what is happening in the larger world right now. I know, is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, I couldn't agree more. The K-shaped economy is in full boom, right? Like, we're seeing the kind of dichotomy of the haves and the have-nots,
Yeah.
And anecdotally, I work with a lot of the haves, right? But to be fair, like, they don't feel like they're, miles ahead of the people that don't have anything, right? But the people who haven't been saving, who haven't been investing, whether it's in real estate or investments or even just savings accounts, I'm sure they are feeling much more behind, but I will tell you that even the upper part of that K, people are feeling that as well. So it's interesting.
And so in that vein, though, that I really thought it'd be interesting to talk about what is keeping people feeling poor, right? And where are we seeing financial missteps? And I think, everyone pat yourself on the back. If you're here in Northern Arizona, it is one of the most expensive places in the state. And if you're here, you're making it, you're strong, in financial ways, but where are we seeing missteps that could really help people improve their financial trajectory? And And just kicking right into it, I had this general thought or theme, and then we're going to go on these random tangents and rants with this, all that we just see clients walking through right now, just from our experience in doing this day in, day out, is really the undisciplined and unfocused planning. And there's so many different, I have this list of anecdotes that I'll run through, but when I say that undisciplined and unfocused planning, anecdotally, sorry, did we need to make sure you have a disclaimer?
I guess today is all educational, right? Not financial or, tax legal advice, right? And so, we're here to discuss the important things that people are facing every day. And so I'm, looking forward to that conversation, but yeah, we don't need to have a page full of disclaimers, but I think we can move on.
Views and opinions are our own. So, so Matt is not going to tell you, hey, this is the stock and this is how you, whatever.
Buy.
Yeah, so. Exactly. Right. So, but in that vein, when I say undisciplined and unfocused planning, do you see people in your world falling into that trap? And maybe share some stories or anecdotes that you're seeing that be a folly to people.
Yeah. When I think about your question, what are we seeing out, just in real day-to-day life, right? I think the keeping up with the Joneses is still, a common thing, right? People see individuals with that new Tesla, right? Whatever, the new house. And it's like, things are great, from the outside, but maybe when you look at the personal balance sheet, it tells a little bit of a different story.
Yeah.
For me, what I've noticed, the biggest difference between the haves and the have-nots is that the haves, they have a vision, right, of the future that they want to be able to get to. Okay. Now we all want the bigger house, the nicer car, whatever it might be, but really like actually putting pen to paper and coming up with the way that like you want your life designed and how you want that to look like. And then really from there, it's just applying numbers and doing a math problem backwards to get you back to today so that you can make some really smart decisions to get you where you want to be.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love stories. So I'm going to launch you to a quick story on that, where I was talking with some clients just last week and they're like, oh my gosh, girls are getting older. They're going to be teenagers. We need more space because we don't, just that time of life is going to be pretty wild for, we'd like that separate space. That's a goal of ours. Beautiful, awesome house around the corner, with that extra bonus room is listed and live. Can we make this happen?
Right.
And so we sat down and looked at it and going through and just really asking the why. Like, why are we wanting this house, and why this particular house, and why, in understanding then their space needs, but the goals that they really don't know what they need that long term. And then looking at their current mortgage, of course, they have this like 3% interest rate and bought at a better time. And so I'm even looking at, I'm like, hey, we split this several different ways. And I'm like, all right, number one, to really make this happen, you're going to have to sell. And number two is you would get 500 extra square feet, and not only on a monthly basis, a significantly higher cost, as well as then the next, if you were in here for the next 10, 12 years, well, girls get through, high school, et cetera, your cost is significantly higher. So if we back up and say, hey, you did have a contractor out last summer, or you did talk about potentially adding on, you can add on, you have this, like, what did they quote you approximately? And like looking at that, I'm like, do that all day long. Right. And so I think basically in saying to just dovetail into like, hey, if you have these goals of, more space or something like that, detach ego as much as you can. To like, oh man, I just got this. I got to make fun of my wife. I should be careful. I love my wife. But like, yeah, when we were first house shopping, very, very first house shopping, we were looking at identical townhomes, identical floor plans. And she's like, I really like the one that's $30,000 more. I was like, they just had a $5,000 paint job. Right. And it looked really good. Right. And I will paint. I will paint for you like when we did. But it's being able to say, hey, can you get to where you want to go? In just a financially better way. Yeah,
I think having that financial responsibility is a really important thing, like in adulthood, right?
Yeah.
But on the opposite vein, right? I think that, life is worth living and like enjoying, right? And, it's great to have money for retirement and all these important goals like education and college and all these things, but it's also important to like enjoy life along the way. But what I guess refuse to like accept is like sacrificing those longer term goals for something short term that like, if a client's not on track to accomplish those long term goals, like we need to focus on that first, right?
Yeah.
But if those things are on track and the savings add up, and again, that math calculation like checks out, then, I try to empower my clients where they can afford it to actually, live the lifestyle that they want. And especially for retirees as well, as, so many people are just tied to the number that's on their statement, right? And if they don't feel comfortable or empowered to spend their money and go travel and do the things that they want to do in life, and help the people that they want to, or help worthy charities that really need that financial support, I want to give that permission and that confidence to them. But I hear what you're saying is that, you should explore all options, but I guess, what would you say helps somebody reach a decision one way or the other in your experience?
And really quick, as you were talking there, I can't help but think, and that's what's very fascinating, is then people understand the nuance there. Mm-hmm. Like, you're probably talking to more, or I go so far as to say, like, a lot of people that have established or are very close to establishing that wealth, their retirement, or talk to a lot more people that have kind of like made it, maybe, whereas like I could be talking to a lot more people that are like, hey, we're setting out, I'm buying the new home, and hey, we got another baby on the way, and more on that climbing that ladder up. And how you make financial decisions on climbing that up, or as you're then distributing those assets post retirement planning.
Sure.
Is very, very fascinating. So I had all sorts of different thoughts. I'm like, oh my gosh, I bet that is a huge thing for folks right now, where I might be more inclined of helping people have or people, establishing their financial plan and creating budgets and being a little bit more disciplined on that and seeing big picture goals. Whereas then you're working with a lot of folks that might then be in this status of, hey, guess what? Like, your health has a time frame.
Yeah, we have a finite life. We need to enjoy it.
And I know you're freaked out with the economy, and you just looked at your statement went $5,000 down today or something because of all the sun missiles and things going on. I won't make light of things, but being able to say like, no, live your life, right?
Yeah,
but.
I think it's just really about a balance, right? And if you have a documented financial plan where you can accomplish your financial goals and do this other thing at the same time, and if you can afford it within your cash flow, I think all the more power to them, right? Yeah. That's kind of my general opinion.
Definitely. And I would say, so get back to your original questions, I think really, to me, and it's maybe cliche with it, is really boiling down to the why. Mm-hmm. And another statement that hopefully my kids, as Van is sitting there producing this, hopefully my kids will
Excellent producer, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly. Well, I want this to be ingrained in their minds, and I hope more and more adults could take this to heart of, you can choose your choice, but you can't choose your consequence.
I like that.
Right. And just that simple of just saying, go do the bigger house, or buy the car, or do the thing.
Right.
But just understand what consequences that has. And if, in certain financial situations, those things can be more costly
for sure
to you. And if you're okay with that,
right, then
great. But if not, for instance, we talked, so let's get into this one, because you had a different opinion on this. So for instance, I think it's interesting where I like to challenge kind of some traditional mindset, especially, not to fault generationally, there's certain mindsets. Mm-hmm. And I think, especially I saw my parents be very financially conservative. Mm-hmm. Not a bad thing necessarily, but, they were the generation that's like, you pay that mortgage off and you burn the deed in the fireplace, right? And
you could go broke safely, kind of thing.
Yeah, something like that. So I think it's interesting right now where a lot of folks still have that mindset, especially if you just went through this unicorn of 2% and 3% interest rates.
Right.
And I can't help but think, and I know there's risk thresholds and everything, and I'm not the financial advisor. I'm not guaranteeing any rates of return here, but yeah, exactly. But to say like, all right, if you at certain times of life and certain situations, I get that totally makes sense. But if I'm talking to folks that have other financial plans, have you really sat there and put a list of priorities on where a free and clear home sits in that pecking order?
Yep.
And are you matching the distribution of your income or investment to that pecking order? Mm-hmm. Because a lot of times, and it's interesting, just anecdotally to me, is I'll have folks that were very aggressive, paid off that home, and then they're like, all right, our home's free and clear, and now we want to do a renovation project, or now we want to help the kids with college, or now we want to go and start a business, or like these are all things that have happened. And then I went, well, now you're borrowing against equity or assets or student loan or something, whereas you had a 2 or 3% interest rate.
Yeah. And I guess to be impartial, or to be fair, like you're kind of impartial, right? Because once like, the loan is done, like it's kind of, behind the scenes, right?
Yeah.
But I guess you're wondering, how does somebody reasonably decide whether to accelerate like a mortgage payoff schedule versus accomplishing all the other financial goals? Is that kind of
well, yeah. So I guess from the financial advice, what's your take on that? Is, again, each scenario is different, case by case. But if you have kids that have, college funds that still need funding, 401ks, maybe needing some attention or maybe just barely tracking. And do we really want to be putting that extra money towards a 2 or 3% mortgage rate right now? Or should we be, putting some rainy day in, saving some investment to get, what are your thoughts on that?
That's a great question. I mean, I think regardless of the percentage, because, I think it's more about the philosophy and the perspective, right? So how I approach these types of decisions with clients is really splitting goals into 3 different buckets.
Okay.
Short, medium, and long-term goals. Right. So short is
short, medium, long-term
goals.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. Short is like less than 1 year. Medium is 1 to 5 years. And then long-term is 5 or longer.
Yeah.
It's kind of a cascading effect where, once your short-term goals can be accomplished, then we start spilling into the medium and the long-term.
Yeah.
Okay. When it comes to paying off a mortgage, I am a firm believer that there's no better way to enter retirement than to have a paid for home.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
Fair.
Okay. The reason being is the cash flow needed to supplement, the income needed to be able to pay a mortgage in retirement. Creating retirement income, let me back up, is a little bit different today than it used to be in the past, right? Yeah. So back in the day, you could work for a public utility, right, and have a comfortable retirement with Social Security and a pension guaranteed income, right? And then you didn't really have to worry about anything. Now, defined benefit plans, as they're called, they've just mostly completely gone away, right? And there's still some that exist, but really that's only for like grandfathered employees.
Yeah.
So now retirees are saving into defined contribution plans like 401ks.
Okay.
They're allowed certain tax benefits to be able to contribute like large amounts to that, but there's no guaranteed income on the other side unless there's like a certain investment vehicle that you choose that produces that income.
Yeah.
Okay. So then what that means is that the client, the investor, the retiree is taking on the investment risk to produce that reliable monthly income and quite honestly an obligation with a mortgage that it does not have a guarantee behind it, right? The stock market is not guaranteed. Even bonds aren't guaranteed, right?
Yeah.
So it's my opinion to reduce that cash flow. And so I don't often look at this decision through like an interest rate or APR perspective, right? Of a 5 or 6% interest rate mortgage. It's more about a percentage withdrawal of cash flow needed divided by their portfolio value.
Yep.
And if that reaches above kind of certain predetermined or predefined limits, right? There's kind of the 4% rule.
Yeah.
As a rule of thumb as like a starting place and not advice, but
it's
kind of the starting place where most, retirees start to look.
Yeah.
Is what is that costing? And can we assume and confidently believe that the investment returns of the portfolio are going to continue into retirement? Now, what happens, the stock market is not a steady up and down, right?
Yeah.
So surprise things can happen, 2020, 2022, the market can drop 25% or more within a few weeks. So, how do we protect against what's called sequence of return risk is really what we're talking about today. And I believe one way majorly to have a comfortable retirement is to have a paid for mortgage.
So yeah, and that's where would you then? So let's kind of talk to. I guess that probably gets in the weeds, maybe on a case by case basis. On then how much are you contributing? How aggressive are you? Or like, should that family in their 30s be slowly contributing to that in some way, shape, or form? Or is that kind of a positive, or just a balance of where they're investing between the kids' college and the new car, and then
Well, again, it's the cascading effect of the short, medium, and long-term goals, right? Yeah. So if your goal is to pay off your high interest debt in less than a year, absolutely, makes sense to focus on that, right? If you're in the long-term bucket where like college is mostly funded, like your emergency fund is fully funded, you don't have any outstanding debt besides the mortgage, right? You're saving a healthy percentage and you're on track to retire, right? And you have extra income that you'd like to apply to principal to have a paid for mortgage in maybe 20 years instead of 30. I don't think that's inappropriate.
Yeah. And I think, I'm going to try and find some common ground here, Matt. Let me know if we find some common ground here.
Sure.
Is it so? And not to beat this, we have other things to talk about here as well. But I think is it fair enough to say? Because I do see some of this where people make emotional decisions on their financial that So for instance, that they're paying the extra on the mortgage because they love that idea, but they have a car loan out here at 7 or 8%.
Yeah. No,
right.
That's a totally different scenario, right?
Yeah. Well, but that happens, that happens. I see a lot of it. And so that's where, is it probably safe to say, if we looked at then, saying, okay, if you don't have 1 year or short-term goals under like in hand, as far as paying off any high interest debt, and really any from credit cards, certainly credit card to even potentially other loan types.
I think all consumer debt.
Yeah. So any consumer debt, it's that we really shouldn't be probably contributing to a low 30-year fixed interest rate APR.
Yeah, I think we can agree.
Okay, perfect. We're on solid ground. And Matt, I'm telling you, I see it.
I guess what I was going into, assuming that like all that other stuff is taken care of.
Yeah. So, okay. So then if it's like, hey, we're into the midterm phase, and now we have, so contributing that after midterm phase. Sure. But I tell you, I've seen some people that, I don't fault people to having that emotional, and I know we're not in this world, now everyone's in these numbers worlds that play with it all the time. So they love the idea of like, oh, my parents paid extra, I'm going to pay extra.
Right.
And we got the car loan, we got,
and to be fair,
went on vacation and carried a balance on the credit card this month. And it's like,
right.
Why are we paying extra to the mortgage?
Yeah, no, I can agree more. I mean, I think there's a certain balance between, accomplishing a long-term financial goal and then like making some decisions that maybe aren't in support of those financial goals long-term.
Yeah.
Right. Kind of like what you're talking about. But there was something I was going to add to that. And I think it was kind of related to, if we're going to have a paid for mortgage in retirement, right? Mm-hmm. Obviously, we need to not have any short-term debt, like kind of getting in the way of that.
Oh, yeah.
But, the overall interest saved from like paying off a 30-year mortgage in 20 years instead of 30, is significant, right? Hundreds of thousands of dollars. So, and especially with the amortization schedule is just, I think it's worth paying attention to. And it definitely is case by case and unique. But I mean, do you feel like when clients are working with you or, real estate agents are working with you, do you feel like somebody's kind of short-term like pattern of thinking is kind of stopping them from accomplishing their housing goals?
Define that a little bit more.
Yeah. So like say somebody's coming to you, whether it's through a real estate agent or just directly to you, right? And they want to purchase that home, but maybe they're making those unwise financial decisions of like, the carrying short-term, consumer type debt.
Yeah.
Do you kind of like advise them to like how to best accomplish like their financial goal of like buying the house, or like, are you more of like, let's just go ahead and get the house done? And, I guess what's your kind of process when advising clients?
I tend to see more and more, and that's where connecting with excellent resources like yourself is that people, it's almost like, sorry, for lack of a better term, if this analogy makes sense, I was watching this YouTube of a triathlon. I just like the analogy. I'm not a big triathlon person or anything. But it tracked a camera on the horizontal, like someone's coming to the beach and how much this person was wandering in their triathlon swim, right? Basically because they weren't tracking, like they probably swam twice the distance because they're going side to side, lost, right? Yeah. And so I always love that analogy, like how much are you putting your head out of the water?
Right.
And you probably know great clients that meet with you annually or biannually and have that head out of the water and like get back on track so that they're moving pretty intentionally towards their plan.
Yeah.
And what I tend to find is that a lot of clients that I meet with, or folks that, whether I'm meeting with them on the move up and I didn't help them on their first purchase, or we helped on their first purchase and now they have other goals. And it's like some clients I find that you haven't had your head out of water in a while. And so like all of a sudden we got this ski wampus, we got a little bit of debt here and ended up having that happen. And so it's a great reset opportunity where I'm like, okay, you're going to sell your house and the good thing you bought a home, like you're going to make some money, you have some equity here. But instead of just thinking like, we'll take that $200,000, just dump it in the next house because they're more expensive now, rates are higher, and we want a low payment. It's like, you got about $40,000 in consumer debt. You should probably kill, right? Because we put that on a 30-year fix and your payment is, I know it's debt carrying over longer term and things, but I'm going to give you a 6%, 6.5% interest rate, and the extra $40,000 in your mortgage is a whopping $240 a month difference. And you just killed $1,200 or $1,500 a monthly debt that's just grown out of 20% APR. Like that's a no-brainer, right? And then, hey, you should also maybe like, do you have that rainy day? Do you have some other investments going? Give Matt a call kind of thing. And so kind of finding this reset opportunity with people, if that's helping answer the question a little bit, to get some insight on their finances, but then also asking like, what are we doing with that real estate and why are we doing it? And we'll find people on both ends of the spectrum. Like some people, it's a very interesting market right now. If this is working towards that question, and also to that question, where keeping people poor or feeling poor too, because I think there are some. I've had the craziest situations the last couple of weeks. Is I've had these people come in and they're like, I don't know if we can do this. Like, is it even like doable for us and our budget? And they walk in, I'm like, dude, you're 800 FICO. We're at 30% debt to income ratio. Nice. Like, you worked hard. You put yourself in a great position. Buy the house.
Yeah, and I think if the folks are like in that right situation, like we're going to be the first ones to like excitedly tell them that, right? And like, go ahead and like, accomplish that goal that like, is really important to you.
Yeah.
Sometimes folks just need that little pat on the back, the support, and I guess the permission to be able to like make that big decision. And, that's, I guess, what we help them with. Yeah.
It's an irony to me sometimes because I have the opposite happen where someone's like, let's do this. I want to buy $1 million house. Yeah. You're like, oh, like, what have you done to prepare on this? And I was like, nothing. I'm like, I love your optimism. Yeah. Whereas, again, I've seen this as pessimism piece. But does that help answer the question a little bit?
No, it does. Yeah. Positioning? Yeah. I guess I'm also just wondering, when you see that like move up buyer and say somebody's got a bunch of like equity in their home that, they're thinking about just plunking the whole thing down in a new house. Like, how do you see that play out usually?
So it's very interesting. A lot of people are highly payment sensitive right now in the market, right? Yeah. Knowing where the prices have appreciated and the move up is typically then expanding. Like even if they back in 2020 were buying a bigger home, it was going to come at a bigger price. But now where the market's gone, not only was that house a higher price tier anyways, but it's appreciated at a higher price tier. So a lot of folks are leaning towards putting majority of those funds down. But what I would go so far as to say, it's very interesting. And again, asterisks for people, talk to Matt about it. I do think it's very interesting where I have seen, and we were actually talking about this just in a little prep here on for the podcast, where I have seen people be so payment sensitive that they have sunk more assets into the next home than they probably should have, in the form of then they're coming my way saying, hey, we now want to redo the floors. How should I get 20 grand out? I'm like, well, you just put $300,000 down. Sorry, bless you. There was a conference. But you just sucked $300,000 from your proceeds into this house. You could have easily held 20 grand back on your mortgage, and from a budget standpoint and from AP, interest rate and everything, would have been far smarter for you, or to say, okay, you don't have the rainy day established. You don't have, you haven't started talking about that financial plan and really funding your future.
Right.
And again, this is where mid, short, long, and free and clear home. And again, these are things that come at conflict. But I think that's where people don't talk to professionals like yourself and start to build a plan to say, hey, Matt, I'm going to have a $300,000 payday. Should I put it all against the mortgage, or should I diversify this nest egg that I have now? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, having eggs in different baskets, of course. I think having eggs in different tax baskets also makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah.
And quite honestly, the I guess I have to be gentle with my phrasing here, but some of the greatest flexibility that thank you.
Yeah, you're good.
That a client can have in retirement is having tax diversification, right?
Yep.
So money not only in retirement accounts pre-tax, like a 401k, right? But also Roth IRA for tax-free retirement income, and also after tax, right? And that's usually the bucket where the house and the savings account live, right? Is the after tax. Yeah. One of the greatest, in my opinion, like parts of the tax law is the capital gains exclusion on primary residences, right? And, I hear what you're saying about, maybe you think twice before putting the whole thing down, because like it's great to have a lower payment, but can that also provide other benefits for you by growing, an after-tax portfolio that maybe you wouldn't have otherwise had?
Yeah.
So that's
and I get totally the irony for people that have to be like, well, Matt just said he likes the idea of a free and clear house, so isn't more money helping with that? And it's like, no. This is where the personalized planning and that personalized balance. I mean, it's just like, and I love my analogies, so just tell me if I'm overdoing it here, but I love fitness analogies where you're like, oh, so-and-so's like doing this workout. Let me do that workout. It's like, no. Well, what do you need?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like
we don't need to look like Spartans from 300, right?
Yeah. Running 5 miles sounds great for like Dan's workout. And then like, Sally likes her Pilates. Yeah, but it's like all of these can be good, but what do you need? Right. Yeah. Based on your goals.
Did you see, a side question, did you see the firefighters doing the Pilates class? No. Oh, they're dying,
Yeah.
I've never done one, but I'm sure it's not easy.
And I think that's just where I see, and I think and oftentimes talk with clients just of like, hey, where you stand to save the most amount of money and get closer to your why, right? Because money can be just freedom and means, right? To accomplish what you want to accomplish, essentially. And so to reduce waste, or like I'm talking about that swimmer going side to side, it's like, well, unless you really enjoyed the journey of people kicking you in the face in a triathlon swim, haven't done it, but heard plenty about it. But unless you really enjoy getting your butt kicked a little bit and having to get back on track, like, not that I'm trying to oversell our services, but like talk to professionals and one of the things actually here we go. We just had talked about this too, is you cannot copy and paste. And we do that so often. Yep. I see that so often of like I was telling you of someone wanting to do a move up right now. And they're like, hey, so-and-so or my friend kept their house, is now rental. And, that was 10 years ago and they love it. And it's just the best rental property for them. Right. And so we want to do that now. And it's like, okay, cool. There are some true principles to the value of investment properties, but let's also talk about, does that really fit into your financial plan? Right. And then based on where market's heading right now, like I honestly, if we were looking live today, my line to a lot of folks right now is like, if you're going to hold on to the vacating residence, you pretty much are, like, if you really want to hold on to it, it's going to be long term. Like if you're thinking, hey, we'll hold on to it in 3 to 5 years
or 2 years,
sell it or two, or something, then, or even like, make that decision when we're coming to that capital gains window or something. Like you're not going to gain a lot of appreciation in the next 24 months. My best guess, right? Pretty flat market predicted here. I think we took a lot of equity in the markets in the first, couple years of this decade, and wrapping up this decade will probably pretty flat, right? I don't think we're going to see a lot of rent rise in Flagstaff. So depending on the time that you bought that home, even the offset, if you bought with a 2 or 3% interest rate, are maybe going to cash flow a little bit. Is it really, if you're buying another home and you're going to be financing more there because you've, is it really going to offset that much? And so I just think that's a perfect, again, case where, and there's so many other cases where people copy and paste what someone else did. And you're like, different goals, different timeframes, different set of circumstances. Do you see that in your industry as well?
Yeah, I think what we're really talking about here are biases.
Yeah.
Right. And the psychology behind like financial decisions, I think is really important to not ignore. Right. So, keeping up with the Joneses is maybe one, anchoring bias, right? Anchoring to that 2.9% interest rate mortgage, right? And keeping, and maybe not making a financial decision that objectively is better by taking on a 5 or 6% interest mortgage, right?
Yeah.
I did that recently for a client. Everybody's situation is different, right? But in this scenario, it turned out to be better to just go ahead and take the money and move on, right?
Yeah.
So having those biases. And I think another one that we've been kind of talking about is like, even with that free and clear mortgage, right? Maybe you're absolved of the principal and interest responsibility, but you still have property taxes and insurance that are still going to, and maintenance that are still going to continue into retirement. So, I think often people think that if I have a paid for home, nobody can ever take it from me. Well, guess what? The tax assessor can.
Did you read your HOA CC&Rs?
The insurance companies might leave town, so you just never know what's going to happen. So I think having maximum flexibility is key. And that's really what like diversification of not only taxes, investments, but also financial strategies, and having your options, available to you is probably the best thing for you.
Yeah. Now I know this is we are in a wandering conversation, so hopefully everyone's enjoying as we just tackle different principles. And again, you and I are in this day to day, so I really hope people are finding value and thinking through this and how they think about their money and decisions. Right. But another one that I want to add into as well, and I'm seeing it. I know this pertains to a set amount of people, and so I want to be careful on this. Because we are seeing more and more of this, is I'm hearing the word trust a lot more, and people dealing with monies inheriting. And we know that that is going to only increase, right? That we have this large wealth transfer and like, hey, When you're hearing, I don't have that rich uncle either, so I know not everyone's getting this windfall here, but to be able to say, like, for those folks that this may apply to on both fronts, whether you're the grantor or the beneficiary here, I really think it's interesting. And I've seen a lot in that similar mindset of saying, hey, boom, let's help you with the house. Here's a bunch of money, or we're going to distribute that to the house, or we got, grandma gave us this inheritance. We're super grateful for it. We're going to buy a house. But the same vein comes in of like, hey, what are the goals? I know this is like, if grandma really wants to help you out, and then she gave this awesome gift to you. Yep. Should we put it all towards the house right now, or should we diversify that?
Well, I guess it depends on the situation.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
But you're, I guess, kind of referring to trust in general, right? Like estate planning, right?
Yeah.
So, I think there is a large wealth transfer that's coming.
Yeah.
Some folks decide that putting their home into the name of the trust is best. And I'm not saying that it is or not, because I'm not an attorney, but generally speaking, a trust avoids having multiple beneficiaries be co-owners of a property after grandma passes away. So that can be really beneficial for making property decisions, whether we're going to keep it or sell it, right? Is one sibling going to buy out the other? But, generally speaking, when, beneficiaries are like co-owners on a property, they kind of have to like agree to everything on essentially every decision. So a trust can be beneficial. I'm not saying that it's perfect for every situation, but I would say talk to an estate attorney about it. I think another thing that you touched on was, kind of like pre-funding inheritances, right? I'm seeing that a lot with my clients, right? Because they're seeing this great appreciation in their portfolio, and then all of a sudden, they hear about their grandson or their nephew or somebody who's just really struggling to even get into that first home, right? And I mean, what a greater gift could you give? And I think being able to live and see the benefits of your generous gifts, right? Because you can do tax-free gifts up to certain dollar amounts, pretty large amounts. So like, I think if that's somebody's purpose in retirement is to like support the people that are important to them, I think it's great to see that during their life and not just waiting until they die.
I love where you took that. Yep. And being able to, so that's another area of saying, hey, think about if you're one of those fortunate people that you're thinking of this, this wealth transfer down the road and helping out the kids of like, hey, seeing that now could be, it could add more value now.
Exactly. To your life, right?
And to your life as well. Yeah. Or to the beneficiaries last and to yours.
Both, and I mean, sometimes like, folks just starting out like early in their career. I mean, I was in the same place, just, it's hard to get started, right? And just that first 10,000 to save for a down payment, I mean, who knows if that's even scratching the surface now for a down payment. But not only is that a monumental task, but like also discovering your career, maybe starting a family, and if that little push ahead so that like, you don't have to do it all yourself, I think is really valuable. And if, grandparents want to be able to give and like see the benefits of like their generosity during their life. And this goes for charities too. I'm really become a big proponent of, should we leave everything to the kids? And I've seen some amazing stories where families are more than happy with what they receive, but maybe they're not receiving all of it. Right. Yeah. And especially from a tax perspective, there's some really interesting opportunities to like, I guess, not give the government a tip. Right.
Sure.
And by proper estate planning, having certain investment accounts like go to charities that, are digging wells out in Africa, or funding, scholarships for single mothers, right, who are trying to go to nursing school, for example. Those are like real life scenarios that I've actually seen that it's just amazing to like actually see that come to life.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it starts to get into this whole bigger vein that I know is oftentimes in a lot of the, when we talk about the different clientele or stages of life that people are at, that oftentimes in that initial stage of life, so many people I see, and being, part of a young family myself, is that oftentimes that shorter mid just seems to blind you.
It does.
Right? It's like, oh my gosh, kids are asking, got to get the new backpacks now for school and all these different things. And it's like, oh my gosh. But to be able to see like, just a little bit of perspective and seeing what could be possible and building towards those goals. Yeah. And I think really helps people keep on that track.
And I think having that vision long-term clear, with your spouse, your partner, your family, or even by yourself of what do I want my life to look like 10, 15, 20, 30 years from now.
Yeah.
And then again, it's just a math problem to go backwards, right?
And this is like, I've had a good friend, Helaman Garcia on here, who's a therapist. And so this almost gets into his world here to where, because a lot of it is a psychology and how we believe. And I think it's so interesting too. And this kind of comes back to a similar theme of that bias. But really that we mimic and mirror a lot of what was taught to us or what we experienced. And I find that I feel so fortunate in my world. Like the first time I sat down, or I was just getting my feet wet in the lending world, and I'm seeing like hundreds of different people's pay stubs and pay scales and how they're paid and how they own their business and how they run their income and how they do and how they invest in what the real estates and their assets. And I was like, man, I got a really like fortunate front row seat to like, there's a lot of different ways to do this. Yeah. Right. I saw a tax return. It was the funniest thing. I was like really understanding a tax return. And I was like and this is just the funniest point to me, where like everyone, like most people just, here's the one box. Here's the one box year after year, right? Here's the one box, right? Of like, here's my W-2, right? Sure. And then I was like, there's like so many different boxes here of like ways that you can generate. And to me, you know, it's the government's way of trying to filter it all through. But it was like, hey, here's so many different ways that you can create wealth and create income and opportunity. Yeah. And so I guess where I'm going with this one, if I think another thing, just keeping people poor, is like your own biases of what you grew up with, or what your parents did or didn't do or didn't know. And
it could motivate you one way or the other, right? You know, anecdotally, like, you know, I grew up as a have-not. You know, my dad was a working chef. You know, he used to work 60 hours a week, and my mom stayed home with the kids, and eventually she's entered back into the workforce. But being out of work for a couple of years, like, it's gonna, you know, kind of slow down your career path, right? And so, and to see how hard they worked for what, you know, they accomplished. I mean, it's pretty incredible what hard work can do.
Absolutely.
But, you know, I think it's also back to like the psychology you were saying. It's really about the mindset. It's rarely about the numbers and the math. It's really about the belief systems, right? And the actions that you take from those behaviors, right? And those beliefs. And really those are influenced by your thoughts initially. So, you know, that's kind of like the root of what you're trying to identify, is like that cognitive belief of, do you want to be a have, or are you going to be a have not, right? Because believe it or not, it'll probably be decided for you, and maybe not in the most favorable way if you don't decide yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think just taking your future and your goals and your financial intentions, seeking the resources, right? And if you don't have the questions, find the people, right? Of like, and I do this, you know, and I just think it's a powerful point maybe as we work to kind of conclude on this whole topic of, people can be a lot more empowered than they are. And I know it's all the little fun stories of like, hey, you know, the janitor that just saved a little bit and then all of a sudden has like a 7-figure portfolio because they just had the intention that, hey, I'm in this situation and I like my situation, but I need to make other accommodations. Mm-hmm. I need to be investing in markets or talking with the right people or figuring things out or being consistent on this. Right. And that you can still accomplish amazing things from whatever walk of life, but it's with creating the right plan and intentions around it.
I agree. And I think having, you know, the mindset of like saving first and spend what's left is kind of like a switch of perspective that I think is really valuable, especially to younger people.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and yeah, because when we go back from, you know, Matthew telling people, hey, you need to go on that beach vacation here, you're not getting any younger, right? To then a lot of that consumerism, right? And social media, all these different things.
That's what I was going to say is, you know, be careful, I guess, where you get your advice from, because, you know, we're licensed professionals. Like, we've been in the industries that we're in, you know, for a long time. And, you know, I guess there's the finfluencer, like, you know, on TikTok or whatever. And sometimes I've learned some, give them credit, like some great things on there, right? But, you know, you just have to be careful and I guess like not take it as gospel, you know, and really just trying to make the best decisions with the education, the information that you can have.
Yeah. So. Well, and it's the same thing. I go to that same analogy of like the advertisement that pops up before. I need to do I'm cheap. I need to do like a YouTube premium account because I get the ads all the time. Same. And there's like here's how you can eat pizza and ice cream and get a 6-pack. And you're like, you know, like, all right, what are you selling? And it's the same thing in the financial world of like, here's how the wealthy do this. Right?
Yeah, take my class or like read my book.
Get rich quick. And you're like, no, well, you know, it's the same thing that gets you physically healthy of like, you know, the daily disciplines. get out there, eat well, exercise. I'm not licensed in that area, but a lot of the same things there exist in the financial world, right?
Yeah.
It's that whole like hilarious Steve Martin SNL, like saved money, right? Like spend less than you earn, and like some general principles
for sure
are unfortunately, fortunately, like the underlying law still.
Yeah. I think we have the best intention for people that we work with though, and especially in the community in general. And that's why we do, some educational classes at the schools and things like that.
Yep.
It's just, there's a lot of misinformation out there. And I think, I was self-taught, right? Like that's why I got in the financial industry in the first place, because I was in restaurants, but I love learning about, finances and money, right? And how powerful of a tool it could be, and that's kind of like, I guess my why behind what I do is like, these dollars serve a purpose, and they if you give every dollar a job, I think, you can have a much more intentional life and a much more fulfilled life than maybe if you're just kind of shooting blindly.
Absolutely.
So
awesome, Matthew. This is super cool. We hope everyone found this entertaining, if not educational, or maybe educational, not just a little entertaining. And we'll have to get you back on, and hopefully we'll see. Hopefully someone makes a little bit better decision as they learn from it.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the conversation, and thanks for having me.
Thanks, man.
All right.